Hey there, history fans! Welcome to a journey back in time. Today we're diving headfirst into the wacky, wild and wonderful world of Colonial America. Picture this, a land teeming with opportunity, danger and definitely no indoor plumbing. Imagine the hustle and bustle of a colonial street where every day was an adventure. We're talking the 17th and 18th centuries, a time when Europe decided to ship some folks across the Atlantic to, well, make themselves at home. These brave souls faced the unknown with hopes of a better life. Now, you might think of powdered wigs and fancy balls when you hear colonial, but hold your horses. There was much more to it than just high society gatherings. The reality was a lot more complex and a lot less glamorous. Daily life involved hard work, from farming to building communities from scratch. We had everything from religious fanatics to scrappy entrepreneurs, all trying to carve out their slice of the New World pie. Each group brought their own unique flavor to the melting pot. But hey, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. The settlers faced harsh weather, disease, and countless other challenges. Conflict was as common as a bad case of scurvy on a long sea voyage. There were frequent clashes with Native Americans and other settlers. We're talking clashes with Native Americans, brutal systems of slavery, and enough political drama to make your head spin. The colonies were a hotbed of tension and turmoil, so buckle up, history buffs, as we explore the messy, fascinating, and occasionally hilarious reality of colonial America. Get ready for a wild ride through history. One of the things that makes early America so interesting is that it was like a giant social experiment, without the consent forms, of course. Imagine a place where people from vastly different backgrounds were thrown together, each bringing their own unique customs, traditions, and ways of life. You had people coming from all over Europe seeking new opportunities and a fresh start in the new world. Each group brought their own language, religion, and ideas about how things should be run. This created a vibrant tapestry of cultures, each contributing to the evolving identity of the colonies.
First off, we've got the English, obviously. They were among the first to establish permanent settlements. They were the ones calling the shots, at least initially, setting up the first forms of government and laying down the law. But don't forget the Dutch hanging out in New York, or New Netherland as they called it, bringing their own flair to the mix with their trading prowess and architectural styles. The Germans settling in Pennsylvania added their industrious spirit and farming techniques, which greatly influenced the region's development. And the Scots-Irish made their mark on the frontier, known for their resilience and pioneering spirit, pushing the boundaries of the colonies further west. And let's not forget the religious mix. The colonies were a haven for various religious groups seeking freedom and a place to practice their faith without persecution. Puritans seeking religious freedom in Massachusetts Bay brought with them a strict moral code and a focus on community. Catholics found refuge in Maryland, where they could worship freely and establish their own communities. And Quakers, promoting peace and equality in Pennsylvania, created a society based on tolerance and mutual respect. It was a real hodgepodge of beliefs, and sometimes those beliefs clashed like a cymbal in a church choir, leading to conflicts and tensions.
This mix of cultures wasn't always pretty. The blending of so many different backgrounds often led to misunderstandings and conflicts. Prejudice and discrimination were rampant, with each group facing its own set of challenges and biases. Different groups often viewed each other with suspicion, leading to a fragmented society where trust was hard to come by. But this mishmash of people also laid the groundwork for the diverse nation America would become. The blending of cultures, despite its challenges, created a rich and varied foundation for the future. Now, we can't talk about colonial America without addressing the elephant in the room, or rather the atrocity on the high seas. The transatlantic slave trade is a dark stain on human history, a period marked by immense suffering and inhumanity. The transatlantic slave trade brought millions of Africans to the Americas against their will, forever changing the course of history. These individuals were torn from their homes, families, and cultures, forced into a life of unimaginable hardship. The Middle Passage, the brutal journey across the Atlantic, was a horrific experience. The conditions on these ships were beyond deplorable, with people packed tightly together in the ship's hold. Imagine being crammed into a ship's hold, chained to strangers, with barely enough room to move, let alone breathe. The air was thick with the stench of sweat, waste, and death. Disease ran rampant, and many perished before reaching the shores of the New World. The mortality rate was staggering, with countless lives lost to illness, malnutrition, and sheer despair.
It's a dark chapter in human history, but it's crucial to remember the resilience and strength of the African people who endured this horrific ordeal. Their spirit and determination were unbreakable, even in the face of such overwhelming adversity. They weren't just victims, they were survivors who held on to their cultures, traditions, and dignity in the face of unimaginable cruelty. Their cultural practices, music, and stories became a source of strength and identity. And despite the horrors they faced, enslaved Africans and their descendants made significant contributions to colonial society, contributions that were often overlooked or minimized. Their labor, skills, and knowledge played a crucial role in shaping the economic and cultural landscape of the New World.
From the moment they arrived, Africans were put to work in every facet of colonial life. They toiled in the fields, growing the crops that fueled the colony's economies. Think tobacco, rice, indigo, all labor-intensive crops that relied heavily on the skills and knowledge brought over from Africa.
But their influence went far beyond agriculture. African architectural styles like the shotgun house can still be found in the American South. And let's not forget about the food. Gumbo, jambalaya, okra, these culinary delights all have roots in African cooking traditions. So while the story of slavery in America is one of oppression and injustice, it's also a story of resilience, adaptation, and the enduring legacy of African culture. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can find ways to survive, to create, and to leave its mark on the world.
The era of salutary neglect. Now, let's talk politics.
You see, ruling colonies from thousands of miles away wasn't exactly a walk in the park, even for a king with as much swagger as George III.
So, for a good chunk of the 17th and 18th centuries, England adopted a policy historians call salutary neglect. It's a fancy way of saying, you do you, colonies.
Essentially, England was too busy with its own problems, wars, revolutions, the usual, to micromanage its American colonies.
This hands-off approach might sound chaotic, but it actually gave the colonists a taste of self-rule, something they wouldn't soon forget.
This period of relative autonomy allowed the colonies to develop their own political systems and institutions, setting the stage for the big showdown that was to come.
Because, as we all know, teenagers and colonies eventually crave independence. Section 6. Town meetings, democracy in action sometimes. So, how did this whole self-governance thing work in practice? Well, imagine a town hall meeting, but instead of boring speeches and stale coffee, you've got heated debates about taxes and land rights. It was democracy in action, colonial style.
In New England, town meetings became a cornerstone of local government. Free men, sorry ladies, you had to wait a while for your voting rights, would gather to discuss issues, make decisions, and elect representatives. These meetings were a far cry from the stuffy parliaments of Europe, and they fostered a spirit of independence and civic engagement among the colonists.
Of course, this being the 1700s, not everyone got a say. Women, enslaved people, and even men without property were often excluded from the political process. But hey, democracy is a work in progress, right? Section 7. The Great Awakening religion gets fired up. Now let's shake things up with a little religious revival. The Great Awakening, a series of religious revivals that swept through the colonies in the mid-18th century, might sound like a snooze fest, but trust me, it was anything but. Think fiery sermons, emotional conversions, and a whole lot of soul-searching.
Preachers like Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield became rock stars of their day, drawing huge crowds with their messages of personal salvation and spiritual rebirth. The Great Awakening wasn't just about getting right with God, though. It also had a profound impact on colonial society and politics. It challenged traditional authority, emphasized individual experience, and fostered a sense of unity among the colonies.
Section 8. Challenging the Old Order, a preview of revolution. This new emphasis on individual liberty and questioning authority didn't exactly sit well with the old guard, both in the colonies and back in England. The Great Awakening planted the seeds of dissent and rebellion, challenging the established social and political order.
People started asking uncomfortable questions. Why should we pay taxes to a king who doesn't represent us? Why should religious leaders hold so much power? And perhaps most importantly, why are we drinking lukewarm tea when we could be having something a little stronger? Okay, maybe that last one wasn't a major factor in the revolution, but the point is, the Great Awakening helped to create a climate of questioning and resistance that would eventually lead to the colonies declaring their independence.
Section 9, Legacy of the Colonies, a mixed bag. So there you have it, a whirlwind tour of colonial America. It was a time of contradictions, a melting pot of cultures, and a breeding ground for revolutionary ideas. The legacy of this period is complex and multifaceted, shaping the nation we know today. From the ideals of self-government to the horrors of slavery, the colonial era left an indelible mark on American history. It's a reminder of the importance of freedom, the dangers of intolerance, and the enduring power of the human spirit. So the next time you're sipping your morning coffee or tea, if you're feeling British, remember the fascinating, flawed, and ultimately revolutionary world of colonial America.